Then no Sports Center, we go over a college football game preview and prediction on the Week 7 matchup between the Clemson Tigers and the Florida State Seminoles. Huge matchup for both these teams coming up here in Week 7. You got Clemson, who is 6-0 on the season. They're still undefeated, ranked in the top 4, and they're looking to move to 7-0, but they're facing off against a Florida State team that is definitely not a pushover team this season. They're 4-2 on the year. They've lost 2 straight, but Florida State is definitely an improved team. So could potentially be a close one and definitely a crucial one for both these teams coming up here in Week 7. We'll be going over a full game preview and prediction on this matchup here today, starting out with your team trends. Clemson beat Boston College 31-3 in their Week 6 matchup. So a good win there for Clemson. Obviously, Boston College hung around for a while in that matchup, but Clemson was able to pull away in the second half and get the win. Once again, they're 6-0 on the season, now ranked number 4 in the country, so they've made it back into the top 4. Florida State lost to NC State 17-19. Really gave NC State a scare there. NC State being ranked 14th in the nation last week, but in the end they fell short, and that's kind of been the story of the past couple of games for Florida State. They kept the games close against NC State and also Wake Forest, but in the end it was just a close loss. But yeah, Florida State 4-2 on the season. This team is not bad. I mean, in comparison to how Florida State's been in the past few years, I'd say this is probably the best team we've seen out of Florida State in a few years. Yes, we're on Saturday, October 15th in Tallahassee, Florida. So Florida State is the home team for this one. And it's a nighttime kickoff as well, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. So Florida State is a tough place to play. When it gets rowdy and when you get a packed stadium, that place it's tough to play in. So for Clemson going on the road, that is something to keep in mind here, is that Florida State does have a significant home field advantage here. Spread's going towards Clemson, 3.5 points right now. Over-under's 51. And your FPI is going Clemson as well, 72.7%. So Tigers are favored in this matchup. The FPI is going heavily on the Tigers, but the spread is expecting a closer game, as I am as well. Series history, Florida State leads at 20-14, but Clemson has won 6 straight against the Seminoles. Last time Florida State beat Clemson was in 2014. That was the season that Florida State won a national championship. Here's your stat comparison for this one. Clemson 11th in points per game this season so far, 23rd in points allowed. These are out of all 131 FBS teams. They are 46th in pass yards a game, 40th in rush yards a game, and then for yards allowed, 82nd in passing, 2nd in rush defense. So, I mean, you got a good rush defense here in Clemson, strong defensive line, linebacking core, and defensively that was kind of the strength for Clemson last season too, was their defense, but it was just their offense that struggled at times. And for the early parts of the season here, I mean, Clemson they haven't really had much trouble against any bad opponents, but offensively there were a few concerns in the early parts of the season. But I mean, after scoring like they did against Wake Forest and beating NC State and Boston College, scoring 30, Clemson's offense definitely has improved off of last season, and that's exactly what the Tigers have needed in order to once again be a national contender. And here we are, and Clemson is in a great position right now to potentially make yet another run at the college football playoff. And it looks like the 2021 season was just a fluke for the Tigers. As of right now, I mean, obviously we still have the second half of the season to go. There's a long ways to go until we hit the postseason. But as of right now, it looks like Clemson is a solid football team that is definitely in contention for another college football playoff run. As for Florida State, they're 60th in points per game, 47th in points allowed. They're 38th in pass yards a game, 52nd in rush yards a game, and then for yards allowed, 23rd in passing, 89th in rushing. So they got a strong pass defense here in Florida State. And when you're going up against a Clemson team that is strong in both areas offensively, both rushing and passing, that is something to keep in mind. I mean, Clemson, they got Shipley, who's a great running back, 450 yards, 8 touchdowns on the season. Obviously, you got DJ Uiagalelei, who looks improved off of last season. He's off to a good start with nearly 1,500 yards, 4 touchdowns over 2 picks as well, so not bad. And so, yeah, for Florida State defensively, you're going to have to have a strong game. And obviously when you're going up against a strong Clemson defense as well, it's going to be a challenge to put points up, but you're going to have to going up against this Clemson team. Your recent matchups, Clemson beat Boston College 31-3. They beat NC State 30-20. Obviously beat Wake Forest in double overtime 51-45. So they've beaten a couple of the ranked opponents so far. Obviously NC State and Wake Forest, 2 good football teams. They beat Louisiana Tech 48-20 and also beat Furman back in week 2, 35-12. As for Florida State, lost NC State and lost to Wake Forest, so they've played Both teams, NC State and Wake Forest, that Clemson beat, and they lost to both of them. They beat Boston College 44-14, beat Louisville on the road 35-31, and beat LSU 24-23. Turns out LSU is a decent football team. So that was definitely a good win there back in week 1. Your key points for this one: Clemson 6-0. Tigers are clearly in college football playoff contention. This is a team that is definitely on the right track to make another run for the playoff. And last season, obviously, the ACC was definitely unexpected, very unpredictable last season, having 3 teams at the top that definitely were not expected. I mean, last season it was obviously, Clemson is expected to be a top team in the ACC, and they ended up being a top team in the ACC, but they obviously weren't good enough, having took a couple of losses early on in the season. But this season is different. I think Clemson is an improved team this season. Offensively, they're getting it together, and the Tigers are in a good position right now. DJ Uiagalelei only getting better, no doubt. Strong in defense, and the offense is improving for Clemson. So this is a team to definitely keep an eye on moving forward. Florida State, after starting 4-0, they lost 2 straight close games. Once again, those losses were to Wake Forest and NC State. But Florida State is still a team that's got some tremendous potential. I like the Seminoles a lot. I think this is a team that I could see getting to 7-8 wins once the season is said and done. I think Florida State's got potential to get to a decent bowl game this season, and obviously this is a big test for Florida State to see where they're at moving forward after their first 6 games of the season, going up against probably the best team they're going to play for the rest of the season here in Clemson. I mean, down the road, they got Syracuse on the road, who looks pretty good right now, Miami on the road as well, and then, of course, Florida to finish out the season. But I'd say this Clemson game is far and away the biggest test that they're going to have down the stretch here. They got the home field advantage, and once again, a huge opportunity here for the Seminoles to get a signature win on the season. But that said, let's get to the prediction here for Clemson and Florida State coming up here in week 7. And I'm going to go with the Tigers here. 27-20 is my predicted final score. I think Clemson, it's going to be a close game. I think Florida State puts up a great fight here. I think it's going to be back and forth. But in the end, in the fourth quarter, Clemson scores potentially a late touchdown, getting up 27-20. And we see the Tigers win this game in the end. But I think this is going to be one of the best games coming up here in week 7. I think with Florida State being at home, it's going to be a tough environment. I think Florida State being a team in general that's definitely a talented team. They're improved off of last season. They kept it close against NC State and Wake Forest. Despite being 4-2, this is still a really good Florida State team. So I think Seminoles keep this game close, but in the end, Clemson is too good of a team right now. And even though I think there's a chance Florida State pulls off the upset, I'm going to go with Clemson to win this game in the end. So probability is going to be Clemson 55%, over under 51. I'll take the under and Clemson to cover the spread in the end. So obviously a more of a lower scoring matchup is expected here, and I think it's going to stand that way. I think Clemson wins this game 27-20. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this matchup, and I appreciate you guys watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.